We're going to be hearing from Tom Keem, the FMCSA Associate Administrator for the Office of Research and Registration. And Tom has proudly served the US DOT for 28 years, the last 20 of them with FMCSA. In his current position, he provides executive leadership directing the Office of Analysis, Research and Technology and the Office of Registration, which oversees all motor carrier applications and insurance filings. He previously served as director of the FMCSA Office of Safety Programs, and he's going to be talking to us today about some research priorities, grant funding, as well as partnership opportunities. So Tom, if you are online, if you could go ahead and unmute and share your screen, that'd be great.
Great. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. I like to always start with FMCSA's mission. It's quite simple, straightforward, reducing crashes, injuries, and fatalities involving commercial motor vehicles. And here are all the tools that we use at our disposal to try and accomplish that. It's a shared effort. I know there are a lot of MCSAP lead agencies in the room. I know there are some universities in the room. Hopefully we have new universities and nonprofits in the room, because this is somewhat directed at you, how you can contribute, but also to our existing partners. So it's definitely a community effort. FMCSA is about 1,100 employees overall. Most are in our field offices. So this is definitely a shared effort. We could not even hope to accomplish this mission without the partners, both at the state level, local level, nonprofit, university, as well as our industry partners. And I know there are several or many in the room today. So thank you for your efforts to date. We've actually accomplished a lot. Looking over the long term, we have a lot more to accomplish, as I'll show you in a minute. Again, this is part of the problem statement. If you look at the large truck fatality rate over the last 30 or even the last 40 years, this is really a success story. And I think as a community, this is something we can be proud of. As you can see, steady decline. That extensive dip there, not surprisingly, is the Great Recession. Large truck crashes, like overall highway crashes, are closely correlated with VMT, which itself is closely correlated with GDP growth. So whether it's job growth, whether it's GDP growth, these things all run in unison. However, here's the challenge: the last 10 years. And this is a troubling trend that we should all be concerned about. You know, some might say, well, over the last 30, 40 years, we've taken care of the easy no-brainers, whether it be vehicle design, whether it be roadway design. Those things have been taken care of. And obviously new issues emerge. People talked about distraction. We've talked about drug and alcohol use, things like that. We've talked about seatbelt use. These are all human behaviors, obviously, that really are the tough nuts to crack here. And this is our current challenge. This is something we should all be concerned about. And I've heard the comment from, you know, when I show this slide, well, you know, of course, crashes, fatalities are correlated with economic growth. Yes, but this data or these data are normalized by truck VMT. So not only are the raw numbers increasing and have for the last several years, but also the rate of fatalities occurring has also increased. And so this is troubling. This is something we really, as a community, need to take a collective look at within our own programs, whether you're a MCSAP lead agency, whether you're an organization supporting the lead agency, or whether you participate in our discretionary programs. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Take a look at your program, figure out what we might need to do differently to really cut into this emerging trend. So in terms of opportunity to support our mission, obviously talked about MCSAP. There are many lead agencies in the room. that is really the foundation of FMCSA's grants program. And the grants themselves are about 60% of FMCSA's entire budget. So again, it's that force multiplier. We really rely on the state and local, primarily the state agencies, the lead agencies, to support our collective safety mission. But it also extends through our discretionary grant programs to other organizations, as I said. But the MCSAP program is formula-based, goes to a lead agency in every state, DC, and then the territories. And then they have the discretion, they make the decisions on how to allocate that funding with some overall guidance from FMCSA about the focus areas, the priority areas. And then we have a range of discretionary grant programs from high priority. And I apologize for anybody new in the audience. I have a lot of acronyms on these slides, but I'll explain them as we walk through. So discretionary grant programs such as high priority and what we call commercial motor vehicle safety grants, CDIP or the data quality grants, ITD is the innovative technology deployment grant. That is like the MCSAP formula money that is focused on states as eligible entities. It does not include universities or nonprofits unless they receive a subaward or a contract from the primary grantee. I'm going to mention really quickly our ADS grants. This was kind of a one-time thing. Automated driving systems grants issued by the department in 2020. We have I think there are 15 total projects, somewhere in that range. FMCSA is responsible for 2 of those. And that's really within the space of automated vehicle technology deployment, testing, demonstration. And I'll talk about that a little bit. The other way that universities and others can participate in our program is through FMCSA's Research and Technology Program. That is under the guidance and operation of my office, the Office of Research and Registration. And we have contracts with at least 11 universities right now participating in work focused on FMCSA's safety mission. I'll just mention this briefly. The Transportation Research Board, there's an opportunity for new folks to participate, particularly if you're a university, in the various committees through TRB. Won't mention that after this. I just wanted to make you aware for those new to this area that that is a way to participate also. Okay, let me cover the grants basics. As I said, MCSAP or Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program is the foundation or crown jewel. Again, as I said, 80% of FMCSA's annual grant funding, about 60% of our total budget is in this grant program. Purpose is really to focus on establishing and maintaining commercial vehicle safety programs within each state, DC, and the territories. It's focused a lot on uniformity and reciprocity to ensure that we're all rowing in the same direction safety-wise. Then we have 3 discretionary grant programs. High priority, which itself is split into sub-grants. And then we have Commercial Driver's License Program Improvement, or CDLPI. And then our Commercial Motor Vehicle Operator Safety Training Grants. I won't mention those after this. That's really focused on CDL training schools. I'm not aware that we have any community colleges in the audience or online, but if we do, that is a program that provides CDL training grants typically to community colleges, accredited organizations with Department of Education. There are also some other ways to meet the accreditation requirements of that. It's really focused on training prospective CDL drivers to operate commercial vehicles. But I'll focus on the ones that are in bold here. MCSAP a little bit, high priority, and the CDLPI grant. It's just a slide for your reference as it relates to overall funding levels. Fiscal year 2021 is the same as fiscal year 2020. That is because of our authorizing legislation. FAST Act. FAST Act was extended by a year. It's a year past its life. And we're likely to get another extension into fiscal year 2022. There's a lot of discussion, wrangling on Capitol Hill right now as it relates to your reauthorization bill. But coupled with that is the American Jobs Act proposal that Congress is also wrangling with at an overall funding level and specific activities to be contained therein. Those two proposals, if you will, are somewhat linked as it relates to FMCSA's funding levels looking forward in terms of our safety programs. I talked a lot about the MCSAP program already, and you've heard a lot of presentations over the last day and a half about these partnerships that exist. Right now, we have at least 13 states in DC working with a partner in the university or college side of things to support their MCSAP activities. Most of these are focused on the technical aspects, whether it's crash data analysis, whether it's preparing a commercial vehicle safety plan, whether it's mapping or GIS type activities, which makes sense to me. I would ask as a call to action to our MCSAP lead agencies in the room or on the line today to take a look at whether your state university or a local university might be a good partner for you, whether it to be program assessment. You know, we do this internally at FMCSA. We have a program evaluation division that constantly looks across within the agency at the way our programs are being run, looking for opportunity for continuous improvement. I would ask the MCSAP lead agencies to take a look at your program in light of our current challenge, our current safety challenge. Would it be worthwhile to have an outside party come in and look at our program, see if we're the most efficient, most effective CMV safety program and where there might be opportunities to improve, whether reallocating resources or whatever? Maybe take a look at that. I think that could be a valuable exercise. We're always encouraging those partnerships because many of our bread and butter activities, and I'll talk about this in a minute, very effective, but I showed you the slide on the emerging alarming trends as it relates to the large truck fatality rate. So we clearly have to do more and possibly different things to really cut into that currently. So again, I've seen this number as high as 16, 17 states. Right now it's 13 and DC working with universities. So those that aren't, take a look at your program and whether that would be useful for you as an organization. This slide just lists a range of activities in terms of the high priority CMV grant awards that we've made most recently in fiscal year 2020. We have, as I said, those bread and butter activities. These are highly effective activities. The traffic enforcement in high crash corridors and a recent focus on rural roadways where the fatality rate is significantly higher than in urban areas, not surprisingly. But that gets into the equity issue, which I'll touch on a little later in the presentation. But there's a whole range of activities that can be funded under the HPCMV grant, and it spans all these areas from training. I know we have at least one university involved in commercial vehicle training and traffic enforcement in high crash corridors, inspection efforts. I know we have a lot of locals in Texas in particular, and I'll give a shout out to the Texas division on how consistently they generate interest among the local agencies, whether it's non-CMV traffic enforcement. And that's a key component here as part of the overall program because it's been mentioned in this conference and the data reveals this. it's not all about the truck driver. It's to a large extent about the non-CMV driver and their behavior around large trucks. And from the truck driver's perspective, over the last 40 years, the large truck fatality rates come down. Unfortunately, it is still one of the most dangerous occupations in the United States consistently. Highway driving is still one of the leading causes of death in the United States. So again, really need to double down and take a look at what we're doing and what we might be able to do differently. And I know there was a session on best practices. Hopefully, many states took notes during that and can borrow some of those good ideas from other states and nonprofits and universities who are doing work in an area that you think would be effective for your state. I talked about local agencies. There's 8 awards to universities. We talked a little bit about these regional safety summits. They are a good activity in my view because they force us to come back at a regional level, look at best practices, reassess what we're doing, take the pulse of where we are. And some states are seeing, when we look at the 5-year fatality rate trends by state, some states are having success. Some states have seen a consistent upward trend as we've seen at the national level. But these regional summits are good for that. Some universities have helped out as it relates to mapping, GIS, inspection software, overlaying crashes with inspection data to help the lead agency or others to really focus in on most effective strategies tied to where the crashes are occurring. A lot of these awards are implementation focused. It's not exploratory research. I'll talk a little bit about our research and technology program where we do a little more of that exploratory research, hoping to hit those, to use the baseball analogy. And I've used this before. If you were in Denver 2 years ago, you heard me use this reference. Not singles so much, and that's really where the traffic enforcement and high crash corridor activities are occurring. That's kind of our single territory. We know those work, we know they're effective, but they're very localized. Trying to hit more doubles and triples and ideally home run. That's where the exploratory research comes in, whether it be advanced driver assistance systems or ADAS technologies, as well as automated vehicle or AV technologies. And you've heard about some of that this week too. We are always hoping for more innovation and variety of high priority applications. So this is my call to action to those who may not have applied for high priority or even, maybe even more importantly, CDLPI grants to take a look at whether you might have a great project idea. We've had some universities apply for CDLPI in recent years and been able to secure awards for different types of activities, whether it's judicial outreach, whether it's CDL program assessments. So we would ask you to look at those. And I just touched on CDLPI. Obviously, this is focused on commercial driver's licensing programs, mainly the DMVs or Departments of Motor Vehicles at the state level. They are the eligible entities here. However, nonprofits are eligible applicants for CDLPI grants in certain areas. Looking at the 2020 awards, we gave out an award to the University of Cincinnati as the primary, but it was really a joint university effort and nonprofit effort to look at a national level CDL program assessment, to look at the effectiveness of the program to date and where present ideas on where we might go in the future for this program. But it really focuses on a lot of the rulemakings and implementation of those rulemakings, and the states have a lot on their plates right now. And I think this is an area that would lend itself to more program assessment, data analytics as we move forward. So the states are implementing things like a new entry-level driver training program rulemaking within the next 2 years. They have a responsibility as it relates to the new drug and alcohol clearinghouse program. They will have to undertake and implement some changes in the programs related to that. We have more work to do on the National Registry for Certified Medical Examiners. There's an activity related to human trafficking. There's a new legislatively mandated lifetime conviction for CDL holders who are convicted of the most egregious human trafficking type violations. So the states have a lot on their plate and they could use some assistance in that area. Looking forward, I kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of where the priorities are. Obviously, within the MCSAP grant, we're seeing this year-to-year increase at the national level as it relates to large truck crashes and fatalities. And clearly, you've heard it at this conference. We've talked about it internally and with the states. We have a good handle on the what, who, and when. We have enough data to define those areas. It's really the why and the how that we need to get better at. And by we, I mean FMCSA included. That's one aspect where I think the large truck crash causal factors study will help a lot in terms of the why. And you heard Bill Bannister talk right before lunch about that. And the how, and what I mean by the how is I guess it's related to how the crash occurred, but I put that into the why the crash occurred bucket, the causal factors aspect. I sort of classify the how as how are we going to address that? What programs are we going to implement above and beyond what we're already doing to effectively reduce the large truck fatality rate? And it starts with the fatality rate, but it's really all large truck crashes. There's a lot going on here multimodally within the department. We're talking to NHTSA and highways. We're doing work in the AV field, as we said. That's a potential home run. ADAS technologies, but we've all got to take a look at that, as I've said. We have a new allocation formula in place. I think it's better than the good formula we had in prior years. It more effectively puts the money where the crashes are. And there's a new effort Tom Liberatore and his team, as well as our field offices, have focused on in terms of new macro level performance measures for the MCSAP program, which I think will help in terms of that inward look, that program assessment that we all need to undertake to make sure we have the most efficient, effective programs focused on a large truck crash reduction. In terms of the high priority grant, as I said, traffic enforcement we know works, we know it's effective, but what we're seeing in the crash data, and I didn't want to put too many of these slides in. It was kind of the focus of yesterday's discussion. We're still seeing an upward tick in truck occupant fatalities. Some of that, a good extent of that, is related to seatbelt usage, back to that human behavior, human factors aspect I mentioned. This is really a tough one for truck drivers, and the lack of seatbelt usage that we continue to see among that group, particularly when we look at the fatal crash data. That is definitely a major contributing factor in the fact that that crash results in a fatality. There's going to be focus, as there was in fiscal year 2021, high priority grant notice of funding opportunity on roadside enforcement of out of service orders. And if you're a MCSAP lead agency, I know you know these reports well within the context of the prison program, focusing on those out of service carriers and the fact that they are at several hundred are trying to operate while under an FMCSA out of service order. Again, I didn't provide slides during this presentation, but there continues to be a focus on work zone safety. Large trucks are overrepresented by a large extent in work zone crashes, particularly fatal work zone crashes. Large trucks are involved in think about 13% of overall crashes, but fatal crashes, but they are involved in more than 32% at last look of work zone fatal crashes. So they're really, and that was in the MCSAP planning memo this year and has been in several of the past years, a focus on looking at work zone safety. Obviously, a focus on rural road safety, as I mentioned earlier, that's in the planning memo. Another data slide that I've shown in other presentations is we're seeing an emergence of class 3, which are the 10 to 14,000 pound vehicles involved in fatal crashes. I noted here where regulated. They're not all in commerce, but the fatal crash data just shows us that a class 3 truck was involved in a fatal crash. This is an emerging area, a growing area. I guess it was asked yesterday whether we're seeing this at the overall level in terms of the growth of these medium duty vehicles in the overall vehicle fleet. I personally can't say that. Others may be able to say that if they've looked at the data. I can't say in the context of a percentage of the overall vehicle fleet that class 3 trucks are growing, but I'm certainly seeing it anecdotally when I talk to the MCSAP lead agencies as it relates to these hotshots, these medium duty pickups pulling auto trailers, for instance, as an example, as an emerging alarming safety trend. So I think where there's anecdotal evidence, it might bear out in the overall fleet numbers, but I can't say that at this point personally. And I already talked about CDL grants and the fact that the states have a lot to implement. I'm just going to touch on very briefly, and I know I'm close to the top of the hour here, the new administration priorities. That's the last slide of the presentation. We're still figuring out where we fit into those priority areas. Obviously, we fit into safety. We're still determining where it's appropriate that FMCSA fits into the other areas. Let me just talk very briefly about FMCSA's RNT program. All of our projects, we have about $20–30 million each year in play in active projects spread across 30 to 40 projects. Some of you in the room, as it relates to ATRI for one, talked about the ADAS project we have now, Techcelerate Now. All of our projects fit into one of these focus areas. It's all about safety of the driver, the carrier, the vehicle, and then what I said, more of this exploratory work in advanced driving systems. Talked about this in the broader sense, but we currently have a indefinite quantities contract, or IDIQ, where there are 11 universities involved as part of a multitude of teams looking at a range of project proposals that we award. We just awarded this in August 2020. So 2023, 2024 will be the time when we rebid this overall contract. So to those new universities that aren't involved, I would ask you to take a look at this, stay in touch with us, and we'll be looking again at this contract at the end of the 5-year period. Here are 3 examples where universities are involved in our research activities. I'll just touch on this lightly, and then the next 3 slides, which I won't cover at all in the interest of time, but I did include for reference, this is where the universities are involved. One is examining a really important issue for us, the seizure standard for commercial motor vehicle drivers. We currently have an exemption program from our medical qualification standards. We're looking at that to see if that standard is still appropriate or whether we need to make changes to that by way of a rulemaking. University of Utah is involved in this project as a subcontractor to one of the primary agencies involved. We also have a project looking at onboard monitoring systems, the use of onboard monitoring systems and the data collected through those in the context of advanced driver assistance systems. A lot of the research out there currently does not use onboard monitoring systems and the data generated by the systems to look at the true potential of ADAS technologies to reduce large truck crashes. So in a sentence, we're really trying to refine more acutely the role of ADAS technologies in preventing large truck crashes. And that is work we are doing with Virginia Tech under our IDIQ contract as one of the participating universities. And then this last example is one of those, I wouldn't say one-time ADS grants in 2020. I just don't know when the department will open up another grant opportunity in the AV space for something like this. But Virginia Tech did win an award. This is a multi-million-dollar award. I think it's 7.5 million in total. It really addresses a range of important issues as it relates to AV implementation in the context of mixed fleets. So introducing automated vehicles into an overall traditional commercial motor vehicle fleet. There's a component to work with 6 states on roadway readiness to accept AVs. There are many, there's a multitude of different activities under this grant. So just keep an eye out for any of those departmental opportunities that are published. But again, I don't know when the next one will be. I'll just make a pitch for FMCSA's and the department's summer internship program. If your university is not participating, please get in touch with me. We offer 3 types of summer internships. One is the STIPDIG internship, but we have others. I would ask you to get involved, contact me if you're interested in participating. We bring in dozens and dozens of interns to work in the department, not just FMCSA, to help us with our research and our implementation activities. These are the specific slides on these 3 projects. I'm just going to roll through those. They are in the reference slide deck that you will all receive, and go to the very last slide and finish up with this. And then I'll take any questions in the last 10 minutes we have. With the new administration coming on board, there was a series of executive orders issued. One, obviously, is a priority on safety. That's something we're very comfortable with, as I said, given our mission. But some of those executive orders branch out into areas of equity and improving core assets, rebalancing our investments to meet racial equity and economic inclusion goals. Obviously, climate and resilience of the infrastructure is an important aspect currently, and you see that integrated into the American Jobs Plan. And then transformation and future-proofing. You can read these descriptions in your reference slide deck. This is an area where my team and I are really looking at where we fit in the research community within USDOT. Where appropriate, we can apply these principles in our research. Safety is a no-brainer, as I said, and that's where we're focused right now. With that, I'm at 1:05 your time, so I will stop. And Brenda, I'd be happy to take any questions from the group if there are any, either in the chat or in the live audience.
Great, thank you, Tom. Appreciate all that information. Dustin, do we have any questions coming to you online?
We did not.
All right. Do we have any questions for Tom in the room? Tom, I know for especially newer universities that maybe have not applied for grants in the past, they might be just wondering how to even proceed. I mean, what steps would you recommend in terms of them preparing to submit a grant application?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I talked about, we have the MCSAP grant. That's a formula grant to the state lead agency. That is one great opportunity. I would ask you to start by contacting your lead agency. starting a dialogue about where they might need some technical assistance. That's valuable on two levels. One, if the state feels that it's appropriate and it is within their discretion to decide where they might need technical assistance, there's an opportunity to participate in or through the Formula Grant Program. I know in Massachusetts, they've done that. New York, they've done that. Alabama, they've done that, and other states. So there's a good opportunity there. But secondarily, if you as a university are applying for a high priority CMV grant, you'll want to link up with that MCSAT lead agency to coordinate your proposal, because one thing we look at as an awarding agency is, does that proposal fit within the overall safety program? Or, is there a concern that it might be redundant to something the lead agency might already be doing within its workforce or in conjunction with another partner? So you really want to make sure you coordinate closely with that lead agency. Same for CDLPI. It helps if you have contacts as a university with your state Department of Motor Vehicles, or you start a dialogue with them about where you could provide additional support or layer on top of what they're doing, where they might have an analytical or technical need or a program assessment need. So I would suggest you start there with those linking up with the state organizations.
Great. Yeah, those are good suggestions. Great suggestions. And Dustin, I think a couple of questions might have come in.
Yeah, we did. It's a little longer one, so bear with me here. Just touching base on high priority grant, studies on LT involved in work zone crashes here, as you indicated. Where do you envision most the safety promise is strongly connected? Rural highways or urban roadways? Complicated with distraction and fatigue, given all the states are undergoing massive construction, reconstruction plans for roadway infrastructure and bridges.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because if you look at the American Jobs Plan, in terms of the proposed investments, that's only going to continue in terms of if we see the funding levels that are being discussed and negotiated now, more work zones. Really, I've tasked my team with taking a deeper dive, more been used several times in the last day and a half, granular look at the work zone safety data. Some states do have some interesting, somewhat innovative approaches to addressing work zone safety. So we received, and I need to give a shout out to the divisions and the lead agencies. Back in February, we asked for some suggestions on new and different things that were being done, or we could propose as a community to really focus on these emerging crash trends like work zone safety. We got a lot of good suggestions. So we're pouring through those suggestions now. They will feed into the forthcoming activities, whether it be some of our sponsored meetings by FMCSA regionally or nationally, but also in some of the materials we put out with direction and guidance for the states as it relates to work zone safety. But I am still looking at those data as it relates to specific work zone safety implementation activities to see what might be the ones that percolate to the top and might be new and different in terms of addressing this work zone safety problem.
One more for you. Do you know yet when the next NOFO will come out for the high priority or CDLPI grants?
Yeah, so I think that's referring to the notice of funding opportunity for high priority and CDLPI. So the typical cycle, and I know there are people in the room that are as well or better versed than I am in this cycle now, since I've moved over from our Office of Enforcement to research. But generally speaking, in that 12-month time frame, recent years, we've been publishing those NOFOs, as we say, in the January timeframe. We may get a little more efficient this year, may come out in December, maybe right on target in the January 2022 timeframe. And in some years, given priorities with the Secretary's office, it might be released in February. But you can sign up for automatic email updates in grants.gov so that you receive a notification by way of email from grants.gov when one or more of the FMCSA NOFOs are actually published. So you don't need to rely on us, but we try to do a great job of getting the word out to all the parties as soon as it's released. And typically it's a 45 or 60 day open application period before the deadline. But I would encourage you to look on the grants.gov website. It's quite easy to sign up and put in keywords FMCSA or Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration so that you get instant notification when those NOFOs are published. That's my best guess at this point, the December to February timeframe in terms of release for our discretionary notices of funding opportunity.
Thanks, Tom. That's all I have, Brenda.
Great, thanks again. Any questions for Tom here in the room? All right, I think we're going to let you go, Tom. Thank you very much again for all the information.
Thank you for your time, and I wish you the best for the rest of the conference. Thank you.